Hello and welcome to Wayne's wonderful world of accounting. Today we're going to be looking at Odoo. What is Odoo? Odoo is an enterprise resource platform which combines all sorts of different modules from accounting through to signing contracts, through to CRM, through to subscription services for use in rental or point of sale, documents management, projects, timesheets, for field services. If you've got a field service business, you can basically plan projects with a planning module. There's a help desk. It has its own inbuilt website that you can create wonderful websites in. You can manage all your social marketing and email marketing, your purchases, your inventory, your manufacturing, sales, HR, and payroll. We'll just click on View All Apps, and you can see the huge number of apps that there basically are for it. You don't need all these apps. You would basically select the apps that you need to suit your business. Services businesses obviously wouldn't need inventory or manufacturing. With human resources, there's lots of stuff you can do there. Just one note for us here in Australia, the payroll, whilst there is payroll modules and stuff in there, the payroll connection for filing STPs, for automating super payments and stuff like that is not operational yet. The same with BAS lodgements, it's not operational yet. They are still going through the verification process for accessing the ATO and other services online. So I believe that is, well, it's not far away, but we're still waiting to hear from Odoo about that. Marketing, you can do basically most of your marketing and everything from within Odoo. How does Odoo differ from the likes of NetSuite, Sage, and Microsoft Dynamics? First of all, there's quite a lot of different apps available for it. But probably the key difference is that your one subscription fee per person gets all the apps. You basically, unlike nearly all the other ERP platforms, such as NetSuite, etc., where you pay per module, and I believe you also pay per user, this basically has a set fee for all the apps per month per user, starting at $34.40. You can run it for free for a period of time. However, you are stuck with a certain amount of apps that you can use. However, the main app, the accounting app, for most businesses, that is all you would actually need if all you wanted to do was use Odoo for purely your accounting functions. It certainly competes with MYOB and Xero and QuickBooks and most other off-the-shelf or off the internet software for accounting, and I think it actually has a lot greater functionality in the versions of it. Talking about versions, most of your versions of your online enterprise, there's a community version, which all have some limitations as to customization. I mean, you can customize it quite extensively, but if you need to do actual programming and scripting and stuff like that, then you would need Odoo SH. There is Odoo SH is really great from the sense that it is Odoo itself is an open source platform where if you've got anybody who's got Python programming skills and capabilities, there's not much they couldn't do for programming Odoo for you. So moving on from that, let's actually get inside it and let's have a little bit of a look-see at it. So we've got a couple set up here. Our company that does all our Odoo work is what's called Odoo IT. We do a lot of programming and project work with Odoo. We also do some for NetSuite and some others as well, but it's predominantly Odoo that we work with. There's a test company. The test company we have set up is basically the free version that you can use, and then there's a more functional version for Wake Corp advisors we've set up. These two are predominantly for show and tell. So what we might do, the beauty about Odoo too is if you've got lots of different companies or lots of different businesses that you want to keep separated, you can set up through here. And if you have related companies, so for instance, Wade Corp, we have a few different companies within the Wade Corp group, even though Odoo is part of it, but we actually would have those as companies within that database, so that would allow for consolidated reporting and other functions like that. But what I'll just show you today is basically there's a free version of it that you can use forever for one person, and I just want to show you how you would set Odoo up, whether you're using the initial free version or whether you buy a subscription or whatever. So let's go into here. So you basically get about 7 key parts of Odoo if you basically go for the baseline free version. Most things you can do is basically in settings and accounting. You have some documents management. You obviously have some dashboards you can configure to look at. Not that we have anything set up in that at the moment. And then discussions in your knowledge base, and then you can, if you wanted to expand it, you can click on apps and buy more apps and start paying for it. So when you first of all get into Odoo, the very first thing you can do is either go into settings. Oops, that was a little bit delayed. Here comes the dashboard showing up now, which is a summary. This has got a demonstration company, the default demonstration company that basically, is available in nearly every piece of software, whether it's Clearwater and MYOB, I forget what they call the one in Xero, and QuickBooks. Odoo has its own version as well, which is what we're looking at here. So this is just a dashboard. You could sit down and configure this dashboard and stuff like that, but we'll go over in more details of configuration or advanced configuration at another date. I just want to show you today the setup of things. So you've got your setting up. You can either go straight into settings or you can go into accounting. Both of them will basically take you to a settings screen. Here is very obvious. That'll take you directly to the settings where you'd start your settings. Or if you go into accounting, configuration and settings is also there. So this is the same screen, whether you come in through the accounting or whether you come in through settings. Through here is basically where you have your users. You can invite additional users, manage users. You can set your language. You can set up the details of the company. So I'm just going to move this over a little bit. You can configure the documentation and how you want to look at it. There's a few different templates. You've also got email templates that you can set up. You can basically send and receive emails and everything through Odoo. That needs a little bit of assistance from whoever manages your domain or your email server. Needs a little bit of help from them in getting it configured, but that's not a big deal at all. You can change your units of measures basically between metric and imperial. Through here we go for the use of emails, where you configure your email services, your alias domains, etc., as I was talking to you about before. Different types of activities, stuff like that. Moving down through here, contacts. You can basically send SMSs as well, but you have to buy credits for it. You also have to get credits for digitization of documents, which I'll come to in a little bit. You've got push notifications and a whole range of other things. You've got some API keys and stuff if you for basically barcoding and a whole range of other things that again is really, we'll talk about in another episode where we can get into more details of the development and customization of Odoo in Odoo SH. And then you can get into your developer modes with these here. So these are your general settings that you would go through and configure at the beginning. The next set of configurations is in accounting. And then through here is basically where you set up your physical location in Australia. Again, if you had multiple companies sitting underneath this the same database, you could basically configure one to Australia, configure one to, if it was a US company, to the US, etc. And then that would also set up for various reporting requirements for consolidated reporting and between countries, and also exchange rates and stuff, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. Going through here, the accounting import, we'll get into that in a minute. You can basically, this is where you enter your year-end balances or opening balances. You can also import it too. It just depends, but we'll go into the customization of the chart of accounts shortly. We'll just continue through this setup first. I tend to leave that to not the last, but it's sort of one of the later things you do in setting up Odoo initially. Then obviously your taxes, your reporting periods, so monthly, quarterly and annually. There's some other reporting periods in here which they allow for other countries. Reminders, tax journals and stuff like that. You can configure a lot of this to suit your own needs. I tend to find these back-end configurations relating to taxes and links between different accounts for journals, I tend just to leave as is configured or come standard in the configuration of Odoo when you get it. You can also obviously change your tax accounts from basically cash to, going back, from cash through to accrual and back again. These are, if you click on those links, that's basically will open up and explain to you the difference of it and how to change it, etc. So it's just a quick example of what those things do. Rounding, you can round per tax, you can round per line. Fiscal country, that comes back to reporting dates. Not every country has the same reporting period as Australia, where we have from the 1st of July to the 30th of June. A lot of other countries basically have the calendar year from the 1st of January to the 31st of December as their reporting period. In fact, most OECD countries have the calendar year as a reporting period. We like to do things differently here in Australia. If you have multi-currency, the services that you can select from are quite a few. There is no, I don't think there's the Reserve Bank of Australia. No, there's not. So the RBA doesn't do it or doesn't link it. When you first open Odoo, it normally comes with the European Central Bank as the default bank. We always change it to xe.com because xe.com is recognised by the ATO as a acceptable source of currency rates for reporting purposes, etc. So just one thing, when you do set up Odoo, make sure you save the changes, because sometimes if you get too far down the changes and you haven't saved it, and you do something and you get out of it, it's not saved. So very important, just as you go, just click save. Moving down to here, look, you can customize. You have some levels of customization of invoices and other things within Odoo as to forms, etc. We can sort of do things in here. You've got your choice of printing in color, printing both sides, adding a cover page if you wanted to. You can, if you're looking to send mail manually, you can buy credits and stuff like that. Although I think the credits actually is more related to Europe. Odoo was originally started in Europe. It's become very big in America, the US, widely used there, and I think there's about 6,000 or 7,000 businesses here in Australia using it. So it's becoming more and more popular, and it's not as easy to use as Xero or MYOB or QuickBooks even, because it has a higher level of functionality, but it is still pretty easy once you get used to it. There's a bit more of a learning curve. The basics of Odoo will cover 90–95% of most businesses. The other 5% will need the real functionality that Odoo allows. So going through here as we continue, you got cash rounding if you wanted to round things, sales receipts to send things automatically. You've got default interco terms, which are international trading terms. If you import or export, this will be relevant to you. If not, just leave it blank. You can set up default payment terms, invoice letters, signatories, a whole range of things. Units of measure and packaging, which you would activate if you use inventory and stuff like that, unless you manufacture products. If you manufacture products, you would probably go to Odoo SH. We're at the back end of an 18-month project with a very large manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer of products in Newcastle. The business has been around for 40 years. We have put just about every single app into use in this project with this company. But in addition to that, we have done a huge amount of customization work, which our customization team has spent probably a lot of time meeting the needs of what the client wants, and we've been able to successfully do just about everything they wanted. The small number of things we haven't been able to do has been things that they're not beyond Odoo, but they will take quite a lot of intense programming and configuration and some AI to make it work. So those things that we haven't been able to do that are priorities to the client, that will be in, I guess, stage 2, also along with we're building of the website within Odoo, as the company separates into a retail and a wholesale divisions and stuff. So it's got through this project that we've been on, we have learnt just how customizable program Odoo is. If you've got a Python, somebody who's brilliant with Python, then there's not a lot that you can't do with Odoo. But we'll cover off more on that on a later review of customizing Odoo. Through here, digitization of documents. This is probably one of these little there's a couple of little nuisance factors, I call them, with Odoo, that you actually have to pay for certain things and buy credits. The SMS thing that I showed you before, that's pretty standard with any piece of software that has the ability to send SMSs, etc. That, there will always be credits that you have to buy, but Odoo charges for digitization of documents. Nearly every other piece of software doesn't. Not that I'm aware of. Certainly MYOB, Xero, NetSuite, QuickBooks, and MS Dynamics don't charge for digitization, but for whatever reason, Odoo does. It's not a huge expense. It's just, and overall, it's still much cheaper than NetSuite and others when you combine all the packages together, etc., and all the apps you get for this one price. I just find it a nuisance factor, and there is an additional what you would call an aggravated nuisance factor with buying these credits, in that when you buy them, you actually pay for them or buy them in euro. So for instance, 100 documents, it might be 15 euro or 15.15 euro per document, but it's like about, by the time you do the conversion to Australia, it's probably closer to 25 to 26 cents. It's one of those, as I said, nuisance factors that you've just got to think about. And it comes back to how many documents you're going to digitize as well. Obviously, the more documents you digitize, the larger your business is anyway. So just bear that in mind, that you certainly have you come up, when you start, you get 200 documents, so they give you that for free. They don't expect you to buy it straight away. And look, that could be good for a small business that is keen to sort of use something beyond MYOB and Xero. And in fact, when you think about it, for a sole user, I think to get all MYOB at the moment, it's about $170 something for MYOB account, right? The cost of Xero is going up very regularly, and it's between $110 or $110 or something. So, depending on how many people you've got, Odoo at $34.40 per user per month may work out cheaper and give you a lot more options and a lot more flexibility than, say, paying a a version of Zero or MYOB where you need to have 5 or 6 employees or additional users and stuff that um, and particularly it goes on the number of employees. So if you end up with 20 or 30 employees, Zero and MYOB, or particularly Zero, becomes very expensive. So Odoo still has a cost competitive advantage. If you're looking even in the small business area where you may not need an ERP platform, but you could potentially save on the user subscription fees going forward for that. So it's a case of looking at your business and assessing one at a time. Odoo is a little bit harder to use. Well, not so much use, it's a little bit harder to get used to because it's far more advanced than Zero. Zero has taken the market position because of its easy user interface. It doesn't take much to pick up how to use Zero at all. That's why MYOB and QuickBooks has lost market space to Zero, in my opinion anyway. Zero did have a cost advantage as well, but that's come and gone as far as in my opinion. So Odoo may be still a good consideration for small operators, stuff like that wouldn't necessarily need an ERP platform, but would like the options available to it if it was there. So, and plus you've also got the free version too. So if you're a sole trader, I mean, you could basically run your entire business, or if you're just a single director company, you could pretty much run your entire business through Odoo for free mostly. So just food for thought when you're thinking about those things. So going back to once you get past those little irritable things, back into the setup. Your main current, where are we? Moving down, buying credits, stuff like that. Units of measure, customer payments you can set up. And default accounts, again, unless there's a specific reason for needing to change these default accounts, I would just leave the default accounts that Odoo set up in the background. If you need to import bank statements or anything like that, select the QIF option because most software, such as ProperSoft, that will convert PDF documents into importable CSV formats or other type of formats for importing into accounting software. Use the QIF format and make sure you select that if you're going to do this yourself. Fiscal periods, whilst going back a few minutes ago where I was talking about most of the OECD world's fiscal year is the calendar year, some larger Australian companies that are subsidiaries of overseas countries can apply to the ATO to change their fiscal year to suit the overseas parent company. So Odoo gives that option to basically do that. There's some analytical tools and there's some budgeting tools that you can put in there as well. And there's even an accounting firm mode for accounting firms. So look, it's exceptionally customizable. There's lots of things that you can basically do through there. As I said, starting out, I wouldn't get too concerned about changing too many things from what comes standard with Odoo. You can then also change your documents as well and sort of manage your documents of how they're managed. So you can set up different folders and stuff through there. And then, like anything, everything goes up. Anything that you delete is not permanently deleted straight away. You can change these days. It sits there. The standard time is 30 days. You can change that to 60 days, or you could change it to a year if you wanted to. So, look, these are a lot of the initial settings when you get Odoo that either you or you need to get somebody to go through and set up for you. We might just go back to accounting now. We'll just save all this. Oops, click back, accounting. So that is the setup or the settings configuration. Depending on the complexity of your business, it can take as quick as 10 minutes to do, or it could take up to 1 to 2 hours to do. It just depends on how complex you want it to do. But it's the very first thing you do when you get into Odoo is go through and set your settings. The next thing you want to do once you've got your settings sorted is go and look at the chart of accounts. Odoo comes with a very comprehensive chart of accounts, including manufacturing and inventory and all sorts of stuff, goods shipped, not received. You don't need all these things if you aren't involved in it. So there's a few things you can do to get rid of them. You could either, if you're not into shipping or you don't have manufacturing, you could simply select all these actions and delete, or archive. Or the other thing I prefer to do is go into view and just simply deactivate them, because you just don't know. I mean, at some stage, if your business changes or you decide that, if you're a reseller and you're reselling somebody else's manufactured goods, and you might think, I can manufacture at least one part of that, then, at some stage, rather than needing to go back in and go, geez, I wish I hadn't deleted those accounts, you can simply go back in and reactivate them. So, but for most businesses, you basically can just go through and select what you want out of these. If you have your own chart of accounts, or if you wanted to import a chart of accounts from Xero or MYOB or QuickBooks, you could very simply, and you weren't worried about bringing these back in again, and you're quite happy, you could simply select all and delete. I believe there's a few core accounts in there you can't delete, such as obviously your bank. I believe your trade debtors, your trade creditors. There'll be your equity accounts, and at least one income, one expense, and cost of goods sold. So there's a few things you're not going to be able to delete. But in your mapping, you would map those from your imported things and can just adjust those accounts. You could map them to the existing accounts that are in here. So that's another option as well. So you don't have to delete them all. It just comes back to how much or what you need to really do through there. The actual structure of the chart of accounts is pretty good. It's actually pretty similar to MYOB, where all your assets are start with number 1, all your liabilities start with number 2, your equity accounts start with number 3, your income accounts start with number 4, your cost of sales start with number 5, your expenses number 6, other income number 8, and other expenses number 9. So fairly straightforward. I tend to recommend leaving the structure as is, unless, as I said, you've got a comprehensive chart of accounts and there's some compelling reason to keep it that way. So once you've sort of gone through and you configured your chart of accounts, the next thing is to look at your taxes and what taxes you need. The taxes that come with Odoo are quite comprehensive. And over here, you can basically just select whether you want to have them active or whether you want to deactivate them. You can add new ones again, but I would be inclined just to leave the ones leave them all in there. Don't delete them, and just select or activate the ones that are going to be relevant to your business. So that's kind of the third step in setting up Odoo. You've got some standard journal configurations or default accounts. Again, I tend to recommend leaving the configuration as comes standard with Odoo, unless you have some compelling reason to create your own If you create your own, you can run the risk of duplicating things and creating a real mess in there. We've come across this a few times where clients can't reconcile accounts and they've gone in and altered the configuration of where things go, and it's been a mess to fix. So the best thing to do is avoid those messes and just stay with what Odoo recommends, unless there is some compelling reasons not to. Currencies, look, this has got a huge amount of currencies in here. Again, you go through. This is only relevant if you've obviously have overseas transactions, but you can basically activate and deactivate the ones you need. So it's really simple once you basically go through. You can also add new currencies as well. If there's some random currency that's not in the list, you can certainly add it in there. So after you've gone through, if it's relevant, the currencies, your fiscal position, this is again sort of where you can sort of start to create some more detailed information or opening entries and stuff like that for if you're moving things over for your conversion balances and stuff like that. Multi-ledgers if needs be, and you've got tax groups where you can start grouping taxes and different things such as combining PAYG, etc. PAYG, GST, etc. What do we got here? Accounting reports. There's a whole range of accounting reports in here that come standard. You can actually create your own, and in fact, you can actually import them directly. If you've got something set up in Excel, you can actually import it into Odoo and configure it in Odoo, so you don't have to export it and do things like that. Look, there's a whole lot of other things through here you can do. One of the most important things I want to highlight is online synchronization. This has to do with your banks. We don't have a bank account set up with this, but it basically is a case of if your bank feeds aren't coming down or you're missing transactions, you basically go into configuration, online synchronization. It will have your bank, it will have the details. The provider type will be, I think they called it Yodlee. That sort of does all of the data connections between the banks and the accounting softwares. It will come up with your last date of synchronization. So fairly straightforward. Adding banks and stuff like that, again, is no different to any other software. It's quite simple to add banks. I can run you through another session of that later, where I can show you how to add a bank. In fact, we might do that shortly. Again, with invoicing, you can select payment terms if there is not a payment term in here that you need. So say for instance you wanted 7 days from date of invoice, you'd basically add that in there. So it'll be 7 days from invoice date. And you can obviously have there from the early date, number of days is 3, number of days after. Number of days after invoice date is 3, and it's 100% payment, so you can amend that if you wanted something there. You can save this manually, so some things will save automatically, new payment terms, others won't. I have a tendency to just try to save everything as you go. Odoo's inconsistent with its saving. Some parts will save automatically, other parts you actually have to click on save. So it's one of those minor irritations that you really want to think about. So when we go back into here, all of a sudden 7 days from date of invoice is sitting there. So again, it's very simple to add an invoice term. Following up, Incoterms, I've touched on that before. Again, look, payment providers, payment methods, etc. ABA files, this all has to do with supply payments. You can set all these up. It's fairly straightforward. If you are using an ABA file, you could basically set up a method there for ABA files. So that pretty much covers the setup and configuration of Odoo itself. Once you've gone through there, you've got a few different options here that you can look at your bank balance and stuff like that. While this has a theoretical bank account set up, it's not real, it's not connected to a NAB or anything, but it just gives you some idea. Reconciling accounts and stuff, so when the bank feeds come down as they normally do, it will basically tell you what you can do. It's a receivable, so it's already matched the payment, so you can just simply click on reconcile with that, select, and that is reconciled or matched. Setting here, you've got your choice of setting a partner or setting accounts. I just tend to go to setting accounts, so that would be an interest account. Last year's interest, I'm assuming that's interest received, so that's going to be where are we? We don't have an interest received account in here. Oh, yes, we do. Next page. Where are we? Interest income. There you go. So that's now set to interest income. What do you got? Prepayment of an account set to partner. I would basically look for who was it? Openwood. Yeah, Openwood. Set to partner. Openwood. No. Oh, there they are there. There we go. So that will match that to, and there's a couple there to reconcile by the look of this. So we've got, what's the amount there? From $650. So, it's a prepayment of invoice number 9. So with prepayments, then what you would have to do is just change that change it from trade debtor. No, we want to move that trade debtor. It's not going to let me do that. Just delete that out of there. Set account, and then because it's a prepayment, it's got to go into a prepaid account. So prepayment of invoice, so prepaid expenses, so put it into prepaid expenses, and at some stage what will happen is that will have to be removed. Once you pay the invoice, that will have to be offset through to the actual invoice that you pay when it comes through, because it wasn't in there. Set account, again we'll go in here, office rent. Office rent. Nope. I'm not sure what they've called this rent. We don't seem to have a category in there for it, so I'll just put that into other costs for the time being. So look, really straightforward in basically reconciling your bank feeds as and when they come through. The beauty about it, if you think something's wrong, you can always go back into it, find the balancing transaction, and just delete it out of there. So don't be scared if you think you've done something. If you do something initially and you go, oops, I've made a mistake there, you can go in and basically delete it, and then it brings it up, so you can basically set it to a different account or make whatever adjustment needs to be made. Fairly straightforward with the banking. So going back to the dashboard, which you can have a look at what your sales are and see what's unpaid and what's late. You can sort of go and have a look at those, and again with your purchases, you can review your chart of accounts, set periods and set company data. Customers, really simple into invoices. Let's have a look at an invoice customer. Where are we? That one I'll do. So that'll come up with that. Add a line, select product. Bang, 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 bang. Does just ignore that's in the US. And then, so it basically stays as a draft. You confirm it, and then it will be posted. If you need to revert it back to a draft and you need to amend it, just reset it back to a draft. Real simple, not hard at all. Adding new customers is again fairly straightforward. In fact, one of the beauties about it, wondering if it will bring up Wade Corp, whether it will find it. There we go. So it's actually found that. So Odoo, when it's linked to it, it will basically find a company. It finds most companies, and then you can basically select that, and it will basically pre-fill most of the data. You don't really have to do too much once that's done. You can configure salespersons. You can configure payment terms, 21 days, payment method if you wanted to. You can set up different price lists. There's obviously a price list that's been set up here, default US, but we'll basically leave that on there. If it was a supplier, no two difference. Payment terms, method of payment, manual payment or ABA credit transfer, fairly straightforward. These bottom ones only relevant if there is anything to do. If there's a TPA, sorry, if you've got a lodge, if they're a contractor and you have to lodge them as a TPA under a TPAR report, you basically collect TPAR. So that means that any purchases or stuff that you do with them would ending up in the TPAR report, but that's not the case with this customer, so we will save that. So again, this should save it already, but I again have a tendency to like to save it manually. Vendors are the same. You can go into your vendors, create new vendors, etc. Under accounting, if you need to do general journal entries, you're going through here. You can also manage your assets, loans. You can reconcile other accounts that are non-reconciling. So let's say you had a bank account that didn't have bank feeds to it, and you are transferring money between the bank account that did have bank feeds and the bank account that didn't. You could reconcile the bank account without bank feeds through here. Tax return dates, you can basically set your dates through here. Again, quarterly with your ABN. Opening period, well, it's always going to be here in Australia, the 1st of July through to the 30th of June. Fairly straightforward and apply. So that would be set up anyway in your other one. That will pop up to say that there is one pending. It's actually not the 7th of October. It is the September BAS is normally due the 28th of October, but the ATO gives extra time around the October time of year, October 30, and they give you until the 25th of November to lodge the September quarterly BAS. Excuse me. Again, through here, you've got some working files. You can look at loan depreciation, scheduled depreciations of assets, loan analysis, and currencies, deferred revenue and deferred expenses if you have stuff for that. Fairly straightforward, and you've got an audit trail that you can go and have a look and see who's done what. Reporting, you have basically most of your standard reports, your balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow, trial balance, etc., your aged receivables. You look at your partner's ledger. If you decide to run down a partner ledger structure, tend to find we leave that to Odoo. Tax reports, fiscal reports, and some analysis, and obviously the TPAR there. So that's kind of a quick overview of setting up Odoo. There's a lot more to it than this, but for those that are looking at something or considering Odoo, I hope you find this informative and gives you some idea of what it would take to set it up. Time-wise, it depends on how to set it up. It depends. A professional person could have, depending on the complexity of the business, could basically have this set up in 10 to 15 minutes or up to half a day if you've got something really, really complex that you want to set up. So it comes back to the structure of your business. It also comes back to whether you're importing data and opening balances from other accounting software, and if you wanted to bring in any historical transactions, so you've got them on file for 6 to 12 months. That sort of data import is where the time takes, and sometimes that can take that can take days or weeks to actually do that that setup if you need to do that, rather than just entering opening balances. So if you have any questions, please get in touch with me, wayne@waycorp.com.au or wayne@waydooit.com.au, or leave a message and we will get back to you with answers. And if you need help, please reach out to us. We would be more than happy to help you in guiding you through setting up an account and configuring things to suit your business.